Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Mercenaries video. So in this one, we've got something a little bit different here, given we are just one day away from the Mercs anniversary. I wanted to take a look at something that I thought would be kind of cool. This was actually posted, I believe, on the Mercenaries subreddit a few days ago, or a week or so ago, sometime around then. And it's kind of an insight into some of the early designs that they had for Mercenaries as kind of a concept in terms of the graphics. And there was actually a little bit of information here about the number of skills that a mercenary used to have, which was 6, that got changed before the final game ended up shipping out to us. So we're going to take a little bit look through this, talk about it a bit, because I thought it'd be fun to do, take a look at kind of the initial where it started, and we can kind of compare it to where we're at with the full release. So the first here is the PvE map. Highly replayable, modular, and visually variant without being prohibitively expensive to create and upkeep. Yeah, so I don't know about I think the replayability certainly leaves some stuff to be desired, but let's take a look at the graphics here. So I actually really like this one over here on the left. This gives me more Slay the Spire like vibes. I actually have a video I've been working on that'll be coming in the not too distant future, talking about what I think Mercenaries gets wrong with roguelike elements compared to other popular roguelikes like Slay the Spire, because I think there's a lot to be desired there. We can see a few different designs they messed with here, using kind of the cards as placeholders, the little hero portraits, and then I personally like this one here. Gives a bit more character to the map, and we know they did end up going with these kind of circle designs. And we can see kind of the flow of things, and here it's pretty close to the final design we ended up with. You can also see the in-game board used to be pretty different. It used to look a bit more like the traditional Hearthstone board. I'm not sure why they changed that. I think that would have actually been kind of preferable, in my opinion. The boards have gotten a bit more interesting over time. And they have the different node types, so the Spirit Healer, the Treasure, the Legendary Encounters, where you can get some XP, random boss encounters, achievements as their own little thing, and then the final boss. So pretty standard stuff, nothing really changed too much here, just the graphics seem to be refined a little bit. And yeah, here we can see kind of the full map. This is pretty close to what we ended up getting in release of Mercenaries. We can also see that there was some different design of the Mercenaries heroes themselves, and we'll actually get into that in one of the other tabs here. So this is the one I found personally the most interesting. So 6 abilities instead of 3 was how Mercenaries were initially designed. We wanted Mercs to feel more powerful, used hero medallions with this design, which normally only heroes use. So here we can see what the UI was looking like for phones and whatnot. So 6 skills total, and I believe you got to pick 3 of your skills and an item to equip the mercenary to. And I think this is a really interesting design, and it could have been worth it to actually have this just in the game, as I think it would have allowed for a lot of interesting choice in building your character and making your character feel more like your character rather than a character that everybody has. So I'm kind of surprised that this is an idea that got scrapped, but I do think, I guess it makes some sense if you're trying to make it a little bit more simplified. And on top of that, the UI was definitely a bit more visually dense with this. Here we can see, so these are Rexar's abilities. So we had summoning the Savannah High main, like a kill command. It seems they had a base melee attack, which is kind of interesting. And it seems every character had that, so I guess that's not an item. That is just the base attack, so you could have a base swing in with the character or use one of its 3 abilities that you choose from the 6. I think it would have been great to have a bit more choice here, though. I think that's one thing that still feels like it's missing a little bit from Pokemon, or the comparison with Pokemon. Is Pokemon, you have all these choices to kind of customize your Pokemon to be unique from other people's, and the ways of doing that in Mercenaries are rather limited. You really only just have the item. That's really it. We can see that there was also a ranged attack in the basic abilities, so it's interesting to see that they kind of remove that entirely in favor of just having one of the skills that you use be either melee or ranged, often with a bonus effect. So here we can see some more UI stuff. So talking about the design allowed you to deck build in context of the other mercenaries on your team by making use of a modified deck list. Stitching the hero medallions deck building isn't the place to complicate things. Back to card slots instead. I think this decision makes kind of sense. So here in their initial thing, they actually didn't even put it as a main button mode. You can see the little test code there. It was in the mode section. Then we can see kind of the deck building. We also see some early UI for how mercenaries used to look. I think they definitely improved upon this a lot since the release. We can see, so these feel like, the Rexar ones feel more like placeholders or very early designs. And then given how different Tyrion looks here, I think that was probably a bit later of a design when they were trying to refine how the different colors look for characters. And then we can see this is also how they edited the kind of deck overlay before it was breaking it up into different sections, so casters, fighters, protectors. But eventually they did away with that, which I think makes sense. I don't think it really needs to be broken up like that. The colors are pretty self-explanatory. And then some stuff on the animation. So how this kind of evolved a little bit, which is kind of neat. Detailed view for the 3D build to show how the deck tray works. So something we probably don't think about very much, but it's kind of interesting to see how there is all this concept stuff behind it and how it went from looking like this to looking like what we're used to seeing in game. Card and mercenary ovals. This went through well over 20 iterations. This was initial exploration before we settled on the final combat paradigm. It's important before starting a design to understand the impact of your decisions. So this is interesting. They had different levels of the mercenary, so you can see bronze, silver, gold, and then the color was actually in the middle here, and I'm not sure what the outside color was representing. Maybe it was representing like class of character. As we see, these are kind of the Hearthstone class borders for Paladin, Hunter, Mage. They changed the, I'm assuming that was the speed icon. Yeah, it looks like that was the initial speed icon, the wing. A few different iterations of it here, but I really like the final one they landed on. Yeah, the wing. We can see card foil, keep class identity. So it seems class identity used to actually matter in mercenaries. And then they had the gem that kind of showed if it was a tank, a striker, or a caster. So these were the early names. And they divided them up by class. We can actually see that here. So tanks were warrior, druid, and paladin. Strikers were rogue and hunter. And casters were priest, mage, shaman, and warlock. So kind of interesting to see that they were dividing it up kind of like Hearthstone classes before. I assume that the crit system still worked the same way, but I do think this design is definitely a bit more visually busy, and compared to the one we got in the end, I think it's good that they ended up going away from trying to shoehorn Hearthstone classes into it, and instead focused all about the role of the character, because that's really what matters the most. And this is also, I think, good because there are a decent amount of Mercenaries players I know who really don't participate with constructed Hearthstone. Maybe they did in the past a long time ago, but they don't really much anymore. And so I think kind of not having a needed connection between, oh yeah, this is a hunter card, this is a warrior card. I think just the fact that you see the card, you might know what the character is from lore, but you know what it falls into because you can see the bright border around it. I think that's a lot more clear than having the gem in the middle here signify which role it is. I think it's better that they went back to rarity for that. And then talking about kind of how the level stuff worked initially. So they had kind of a little number here, leveling up the character. This also, I think, confirms a little bit to me that the skins used to be more tied into leveling. And that's kind of a theory I've had for a long time. As you level up your mercenaries, you would unlock different skins for them. That's why we have a lot of skins that feel like they go in a natural progression of sorts, especially with the baby skins, where they start out small and they get a bit more experience, and then they have kind of a final form. So I always had a theory that this was kind of, at some point, part of the design of the game, where as you leveled up the character, you would kind of get a different skin for them and see them kind of improving. But I imagine that ended up getting scrapped by the end of it because they needed another way to monetize cosmetics in the mode, and skins are very effective at doing that. We can also see that they had higher levels here. So mercenaries ended up being capped out at level 30, and now in this they were looking all the way from level 40 to level 60. And that's pretty interesting, and that actually gives us something interesting that could happen further down the line, where they could always just say, hey, we're going to introduce new high-end content or something like that, maybe even with the end game, but I doubt it's going to come that soon. But they could do a level scaling increase, and frankly, I don't think that would be that bad of an idea, because leveling is just experience. And if they did that, it would allow them to kind of pump up the health numbers quite a bit, while not necessarily changing some of the higher damage variables. However, if they did do something like that, they would have to buff a lot of the weaker and underperforming characters who already kind of have a hard time at the health levels we have right now. And here it's talking about how they eventually got kind of the oval design. I think the oval design is very good. I think that is one thing I have very few complaints about for Mercenaries, is I think they did really nail the characters. Look very clean, you can tell who they are, and it's just a visually pleasing aesthetic. I know people who don't even really care for the mode, but really enjoy the different ways cosmetics are done in it in terms of at least visual appeal. So that's something I think they really did get right. It's also interesting to see the game board basically being like a Hearthstone game board. Now, I can kind of see why they decided to make it a bit less visually busy, as when we go into a mercenaries fight, you have your characters on the bottom, the other ones are on top, and then they kind of move in towards the fighting phase. But I think if we just removed the area down here at the bottom and at the top, you could have them be a little bit higher up and then come in together to fight, and could still have more kind of interesting stuff in the corners to interact with. We've started to get some boards that have a little bit of interaction, but I do think, especially at launch, the mercenary boards were just kind of plain and underwhelming, and I'm hoping that's something we can see
future improvements on. I think they're starting to go in the right direction with that. And talking a little bit about the animation of the character coming into play. This is pretty interesting because when Mercenaries launched, pretty much all the characters had the same animations, where it was just you got a little animation depending on the type of character, whether it was fighter, protector, or caster, but not much else. But one thing that has changed over time that I really have liked, and I hope we see more of, is they've started using old card animations and tying them into entrance animations for specific characters. I think it's really added a lot of visual flair to the game, and I hope it's something we see more of. And then we have our last tab here, Merc Currency. that's not a controversial section at all, right? These are just the visual designs for it, though. But still kind of interesting to see. So initially they were going to just have it like Hearthstone cards. You can also see old school design of a Mercenaries pack, but they were just going to be cards, and then the card would kind of quickly convert into coins. You can see a lot of characters used here that we actually haven't seen in the game yet. So maybe this can give an idea of what we might see in the future, but it's probable that they were just using pre-done assets from other Hearthstone cards to test things with. We have a Dr. Boom, Finja, Malagos, and we can see, so we have the different coins and whatnot for the different characters. The coin costs are obviously very low here, it looks like. Where upgrading your ability one level is taking 25 coins. They also had something here about oh, okay. So this is very interesting. How to upgrade: defeat mercenaries 12 out of 100 or spend coins. So that's really interesting. It seems there used to be a progression system of just using the skill or the coins, and I imagine that eventually got bundled into the task system to give coins to kind of level things up. Curious to see if that would be better or worse in the long run. I think if we had a way of upgrading characters without just doing tasks and whatnot, that might be a benefit. Also, we can see once you hit level 40, you could promote a mercenary, and it would unlock a new ability, get another ability slot, more stats. So I could definitely see that coming again at some point in the future, but I don't think we're really anywhere near that point. That would be kind of a bigger expansion of the mode. Also, craft characters, not really much changed there. Also had kind of early design where it looked like, so you would get coins, but I guess you would also get experience from the end, and experience was one of the rewards or something. I'm glad they did away with that. I think it's much better that you're just getting experience from every fight, and at the end you get all coins because the bounties obviously take a while. And then we see the different designs they went through with the coins. They ended up going with a simple coin design. Honestly, I think it ended up looking the best compared to all the other ones here, but we have some experimentation with the borders and then using different symbols for the different roles. But I like the simple one that they ended up going with. And they didn't want to use gold because it's overused, so settled on silver. I think that makes sense. Also lets the characters kind of stand out a bit more, I feel like. And then we can see here more stuff with the coins. It's really interesting seeing these initial kind of designs and skills and whatnot, how there is a passive for this one. Very curious to see what mercenaries would look like if there were 6 skills, and if you could kind of mix and match, because it's very different than what we have in the game now. And then just some more information about the coins and whatnot. But yeah, that is pretty much everything here. I just thought this was kind of interesting to see, and given we're rapidly approaching the anniversary tomorrow, Thought this would be kind of a cool thing to take a look back at some of the early concept stuff, where it started out, and you can see obviously where we're at now and how it changed. Also, tomorrow, the plan is we are going to have a very special video kind of going over the history of Mercenaries, you know, where it started, where we've gone, where we're at now, and what the future may hold. So look forward to that, and that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.